Area. I can tell you, as an elected person, I've called other politicians on conflict of interest, and I'm telling you, it's very difficult through the legal system to prove conflict of interest. I know I've been to our solicitor in Saanich many times, Chris Nation, asking for rulings on conflict of interest of fellow councillors even, and it's very, very murky and very unclear, and there seems to be a great reluctance to go the route of declaring conflict of interest. It's really up to the individual elected person personally to declare conflict of interest. If they don't, it's very difficult to do anything very much about that. At least that's been my experience.
So wouldn't a realtor have a conflict of interest?
Yes!
Having never been a councillor, but watching in my own Highlands Council a tremendous conflict of interest many times, that I would advise you, if you are concerned about this issue, to write to your council and say whom you think is in conflict of interest and make it an issue, because if there's a perceived conflict of interest, the person should do the right thing and step aside. And the Mayor, Jack Marr, has a perceived conflict of interest and he has stepped aside. And I think you have to take action on it if there is a perceived conflict of interest.
Gentlemen, go ahead, that's you.
I think you've put the onus on agricultural buffers on the farmer as opposed to his neighbor. And if, in the event that Vantreight fails, and he does subdivide his land into 10 parcels or 16, you're going to have 16 more roads, 16 more wells, 16 more sewage treatment systems, and agricultural land.
Do I hear a question? No. Next. 2 more questions. Yes, sir.
My recollection is the regional growth strategy is probably closer to 10 years old. And as it's been mentioned several times, at the moment it's being under review. So my question is, given that it's somewhat dated and in a state of being reviewed, do you think it's appropriate to continue to make reference to it?
Absolutely. It's what's in place right now. The review is taking place. It was 2003 when it was finally ratified. I was involved with it right from the beginning. I was vice chair of the regional growth strategy. And until there have been further revisions through the 5-year review, it stands as the document, and it's been signed off by all of the jurisdictions in the CRD, so it remains as the document that covers the issues in terms of growth.
The regional growth strategy is a 25-year vision, so although it's being reviewed after 10 years, being sort of transitioned into a regional sustainability strategy, the population projections that it was supposed to cover is over a 25-year period. So it's relevant from a growth management perspective. It's still entirely relevant in terms of our urban containment and where it was designated.
All right. 1 more question and then we move on to open mic.
My understanding is that one of the ways that the council is looking at getting this through now is by sort of creating a new zoning, is sort of sidestepping the zoning and creating a new kind of zone that's specific to this development. I'm wondering if that is something that happens in general, if that's a fairly standard practice, or if that's kind of as sleazy as it looks.
I'm not sure I would characterize it as sleazy. Spot zoning is not unknown, and this proposal to some extent is depending upon a somewhat similar zoning that occurred above Island View Beach some years ago. And if you go over down to Island View Beach, just before you go down the hill, you'll see a number of houses there. The person who owned that asked for zoning permission and gave the waterfront, or the property contiguous to the waterfront, to the municipality as a park in exchange for being allowed to develop those lots. So it's not unknown, but it is unusual, and rural residential is an oddity, but that's true. One last question, lady there, and then we will allow people who wish to make points. No, the gentleman, sorry, the lady in the yellow.
As a parent, I've always tried to instill in my boys the idea that all actions have consequences. With regard to these developments, i.e. Bear Mountain and so forth, and Island View, what body is in place, if any, that makes the people who are responsible for allowing those developments to pass? How are they held accountable?
Well, the simple answer is that that's the elected council, and they're held responsible at the next election. That may not be satisfactory, but that's...
But, yeah, the consequences of those developments affect people for a great many years.
That's true.
You have to make them accountable right now. I would ask, you could ask your council for a special meeting in a large space that you could then state your concerns, because the council chambers are very small for people to be able to congregate, and it shouldn't wait until the public hearing where you cannot speak again later. So I think if all the people in the room who were concerned in this way, whatever position they have, they should be asking council to be more accountable, and you would like a meeting, a special meeting on this issue that is sort of like a, we call them council of the whole or something like that. Committee of the whole, that's right. Committee of the whole meeting, a cow, and ask for that. And you should ask for it right away because the time is limited. And, you know, you have to make them accountable, and you have to take every action that you can to do that.
Okay. Now 9 o'clock, we have 30 minutes more, so people who wish to state an opinion, if you can do it briefly, you may do so. And I will start with people who have not asked a question and who have not had a chance to speak. With one exception, take it, Rick.
I'd just like to make this really quick in response to the young lady who asked the question about what incentives are there for getting new farmers onto the land, and that is a criteria that we absolutely must address. And I'm horrified to think that we are in a culture that basically acquires land that is zoned agricultural, presumably for the purpose of producing something, a crop of some sort, to benefit the wider community, and that so few people that actually purchase land zoned as such actually have any intention of using the land as such. So that's a problem right there. I mean, that could just so simply be addressed by the following: that we covenant in all future purchases of land zoned for agricultural purposes, may be covenanted or mandated to have 10% of their land actually under production, which doesn't exempt people from purchasing and acquiring and owning agricultural land. It just means that they can still do that even if they have no intention or no desire to farm it. Then they would have to find a tenant farmer. This would be a great way of getting the next generation of farmers on the land. This is actually a win-win situation because, as you know, if you actually acquire agricultural land and farm it, then you get farm tax credits so that the landowner benefits too and contributes to the wider community. So there are actually quite simple and very doable solutions, yet somehow we don't seem to be discussing this.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'd like to ask the gentleman over there who you're taping for. You're taping the whole conversation?
I'm taping for myself. I'm the guest speaker coordinator for the Vancouver Island Vegetarian Association.
Thank you very much. And the two cameras, which I think people should know, or are there three? But there are Dogwood people who came here for Dogwood, because I think it's really important for the public to know who's here. And
Yes, I wanted to follow up from what Carolyn was saying, which was brilliant. What the role of stewardship? It seems that we